So ever since Jim Harbaugh was hired as Michigan's head coach, there's only been one date on the mind of the collective college football world, and that was November 28th, 2015. That was the first meeting between Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer, Michigan and Ohio State. The game. This was something that was over 11 months in the making. And it probably could have gone a little better for us. Okay, no, but all right. So I'm gonna talk briefly about the game, and then I'm gonna get into the main focus of this video, which is to really talk about how Michigan did as a whole this season. And I understand they still got one more game to play. I got a bowl game coming up. We understand that, but um, that's gonna be in about a month from now. It's gonna be so far removed from what we've seen over the last 12 weeks or so that I really want to get it all done right now while we all have a fresh picture in our minds. First things first. People often look at the result here, 42-13, and are flabbergasted. How could this happen? How could this Ohio State team, and which looked absolutely putrid a week ago, completely steamroll Michigan team, which for the better part of the season looked more or less dominant all throughout the year? To that, I say two things. Number one, it's the game. They all know the old saying that in rivalry games you throw out the rule book. Well, that's very much true in college football, especially when the game is concerned. And number two, Ohio State ran the ball, Michigan didn't. That's basically what it came down to. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me here, but if you look at the total, what accounted for most of the offense, you will see that Ohio State racked up most of the yards on rushing and barely anything on passing, whereas Michigan did the opposite, racking most of their offense on passing, barely on rushing. Ezekiel Elliott, as we all kind of figured, got the ball pretty much all the time, and he had himself a big game. And I know he didn't make a lot of friends or get a lot of fans after what he said last week in the aftermath of the loss to Michigan State, but we have to understand that Ezekiel Elliott is still very much an elite running back. In fact, if he had a better offensive coordinator, he would probably be a shoo-in for the Heisman. And by the way, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I am absolutely livid right now on Tim Beck. I mean, right now, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm just sitting here wondering, where the hell was all this last week? I mean, we could have been packing our bags to pass it to Indianapolis, and right now, as it stands, it looks like Michigan State is going to be playing for the Big Ten Championship, essentially by accident. So, yeah, if I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm absolutely livid at my coaching staff. But Urban Meyer did say he was more involved in the play calling. So again, I guess kind of shows you where the real genius lies here. But and I say this objectively, the sooner Ohio State gets rid of Tim Beck, the better. This man has been nothing but malignant on your offense for most of your year. He basically sabotaged the careers of Cardale Jones and JT Barrett by him and Urban Meyer, by not going with a quarterback until midway through the year. I mean, if you went with and JT Barrett, by the way, he had himself a pretty good game as well. He was throwing balls to receivers that were like in quadruple coverage even. I mean, you can't ask for better performance than that. But safe to say, I think his draft stock diminished a bit this year because of things that have happened with Ohio State in regards to their inability to decide on a quarterback and so on and so forth. So this is why I think Connor Cook's is going to be the first quarterback picked as opposed to Chase Beer Carlo Jones. But that doesn't diminish anything that they can and talent they can do. Now, on the Michigan side of the ball, people looking at the defense going, what happened? Well, let me tell you what I saw. I saw a defense that looked spent in the third quarter. I mean, they hung in there for a half. They did what they had to do. And even though Ohio State got gifted 7 points on a roughing the passer call that was brought about by FIFA level flopping on the part of Ohio State's punter. And by the way, whoever that player was that appeared to go down all of a sudden toward right before Michigan scored their touchdown. That's stellar acting job, tremendous. That's Oscar winning worthy right there. Kind of a moot point now, but but I saw a defense that looked gassed in the third quarter. I mean, they kept it close for a half, but Unfortunately, but Ohio State used the zone read option to exploit the holes that Michigan's defense does have, and they kept the pace up tempo, which is something that Michigan's D has struggled with all year. Though, to be fair, a lot of defenses struggle with that, so it's not really saying that much. On the offensive side of the ball, it just seemed like Michigan couldn't really get anything going. That was partly because of Ohio State's defense. Joey Bosa was mostly quiet, but he did have a couple big sacks, one of which did injure Jake Rudock, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine for the bowl game because he's got a month to recuperate. And not to mention the injury was to his left shoulder, which is not throwing shoulder, so that's a bonus. So, I mean, for all we know, if we do end up playing Florida in the bowl game, which looks like the most likely possibility at this point. It could be the battle of backup quarterbacks, but I have a reason to believe that Jake Rudock will be fine. Um, it just didn't seem like they can get anything going, really. I mean, the passing game was one thing, but running game was frustratingly, once again, kind of non-existent. And that is due to, again, it's partially to Ohio State's defense, also because it felt like Michigan couldn't get out of its own way. I felt they ran a little bit too many trick plays, especially in the first half. Felt they tried to get a little bit too fancy as opposed to just trying to attack through the air, which is where they're having a lot of success. Rudock threw, by the way, for I think 239 yards, which I'm pretty sure puts him past Tom Brady and Jim Harbaugh in terms of single yards record. But yeah, that's what it comes down to. Ohio State had a lot of success on the ground, and that ultimately is what made the difference in the game. And our defense just got worn out. They were tired. And so it's a combination of that, them getting gassed, and them and just Ezekiel Elliott and JT Barrett just being absolutely great at the running game. I mean, you got to give them credit where credit is due. So on that note, let me just say, in all sincerity, congratulations to Ohio State for not so much saving your season, but at least preserving your shot in New Year's Six Bowl. And I want to be a good sport and say I hope you win that bowl, but truth is I don't. I really, really don't. All right, so yeah, let's just get to the other part of it, which is I want to talk about Michigan's season as a whole. I've heard a lot of differing opinions from a lot of people. Depending on who you ask, the season was either a success because of the overall record of 9-3, or failure because we lost to Michigan State and Ohio State. I would say that this year was not as successful as it could have been, but it was still a pretty good starting point for Jim Harbaugh. Because let me tell you something. The reason a lot of people were so shocked by Michigan's performance this year is because, for the most part, they're using the same players they did last year. I mean, none of these recruits really came in. None of these are really Harbaugh's recruits. These are all Brady Hoke's recruits and players. And outside of the transfers like Wayne Lyons and Jake Rudock, it's essentially the same team as last year, which went 5-7 and found ways to pretty much invented new ways to lose, as opposed to being dominant, giving down performances over the course of the season. But this year's Michigan looked like a total opposite of last year's team. I mean, it actually looked like all these highly touted recruits were living up to their advertised skill level. And a lot of that, of course, as we know, is due to the coaching of Jim Harbaugh and his great staff. Tim Drevno, DJ Durkin, who, by the way, I do not believe will take the job at Maryland. If he does, hey, Les Miles might have an opening. But yeah, Drevno, Durkin, Jed Fish, John Baxter, Jay Harbaugh, just Greg Madison, of course. Just absolutely stellar coaching staff. And Jake Rudock, in particular, has been one of the most standout improvements. I mean, this guy went from just a grad transfer from Iowa, who was going to be their second stringer at Iowa, to possibly a early second round, if not first round, NFL draft pick. I mean, what Jake Rudock has done as the year has gone on is nothing short of phenomenal. He didn't have his best game today, obviously. But it wasn't entirely his fault. But just the level of improvement he's shown over the year has been absolutely stellar. And again, I do think he'll be ready to go when the bowl game comes around in December or January, ready to finish his college career on a high note. At least a higher note than what happened today. Jake Butt, of course, continues to be as great as advertised. A lot of people calling him the next Gronkowski. I see no reason to dispute that. J.U. Chesson and Amara Darboh really emerged as big standout receivers. The offensive line actually solidified and, for the most part, did a pretty good job this year. I mean, it wasn't like last year where it was, if you want a good idea of what Michigan's offensive line was last year, look at Penn State's O-line. That's basically the same thing. But they solidified this year. They were good at giving Rudock time to throw. Wasn't all sunshine and dandies. There's still some things they can improve on, but it was definitely a step up from last year. The defense, even though it kind of sort of came back down to earth toward the latter part of the season as teams started to figure them out, still absolutely stellar. I mean, this is a defense that shut out 3 straight opponents. You can't overlook that. And this is probably the worst performance by them all year. And when you consider who they're going up against, I mean, it's not that bad of a sample size. I mean, this and Indiana were the worst performances all year. So, and those are Ohio State and Indiana have 2 of the best offenses probably in FBS. So, take those out of the equation, this defense is still pretty stellar. Special teams was a big question mark this year, and outside of one particularly bad gaffe, was spot on. Blake O'Neill, absolutely great job as a punter outside of 2 very bad things that happened, one considerably worse than the other. And I'm really hoping now we just get all the punters from Australia. I want more Aussie punters. I want all the Aussie punters. Kenny Allen emerged as a reliable kicker on a field goal, which, again, that was a big question mark this year, but, he did his job pretty well. And, of course, we have to get into Jabril Peppers. Well, actually, before we do, let me just talk some more guys on the offensive line. Jordan Lewis, how this guy is not up for the Thorpe Award is beyond me. He was one of, if not the best cornerback in the nation, and I'm thrilled to see where he's going to be at next year. Our D-line, again, Mo Hurst, Willie Henry, Royce Jenkins-Stone, Mario Jamudia, who it really, really sucks is not going to be coming back next year because it doesn't look like the NCAA is going to give him the red shirt. Those guys really got after quarterbacks, just were large and imposing, and were just absolutely stout when they needed to be. Now we'll get to Jabril Peppers. Oh, baby. This, he only does everything. That's supposed to, he only does everything. He is way, way beyond the level potential even I expected coming into this year. I mean, having him at safety and doing punt returns, that was one thing. But then you put him on offense, just have him be a running back, a wide receiver, quarterback. Just he only does everything. And I definitely see a Heisman in his future. I definitely see as a very good chance that he will become the next player from Michigan to win the Heisman Trophy. So, I mean, Jabril Peppers, he only did everything. All right, so, yeah, I mean, again, it's disappointing, as always, to go 0-2 against the rivals. And that's used as a big measuring stick a lot, in terms of Michigan head coaches. It's frustrating to everyone that, Brady Hoke beat Ohio State in his first year and Jim Harbaugh didn't. But Brady Hoke was going against Luke Fickell. So that's kind of an outlier. But you know what? I mean, but seriously, if you told me a year ago that Jim Harbaugh was going to be the coach of Michigan and we would lose to Michigan State and Ohio State, as well as a pretty decent Utah team, but win every other game, gets to the top 10 in the playoff rankings, have a legitimate shot, if only for a moment, at a Big Ten title and even a playoff berth, and post 3 straight shutouts, and turn a second-string Iowa transfer into a second-round NFL pick, I would have taken it. And the biggest thing of all, and this is the reason I'm not so depressed, I'm actually more optimistic than anything, by all accounts, this is going to be Harbaugh's worst team. At least from a talent perspective, in terms of the players on the field. Remember, these aren't his players. These are players from Brady Hoke. So now Harbaugh can come in and bring in truly elite players. And by the way, we did get at least one commit tonight, so today wasn't a total loss. But once we get Harbaugh's players in here, it's going to be a whole different ballgame. That's why I said, and I think this game today was really kind of a encapsulation of what I believed all year. I don't think Michigan's at the level yet where they compete for a national title, but they're getting close. They're a year away. And even then, might have been convinced earlier that saying a year away was optimistic, but now it's looking pretty sure. And I don't usually agree with Skip Bayless, but I think he said it best. He said Jim Harbaugh will win a national championship. Just gotta give him time. And all things considered, after 1 year, I'd say he's off to a hell of a good start. All right, so that will be it. I will see you all again in a month from now, at least, for the bowl game. I'm considering whether or not to do this for basketball because there's so many basketball games. I have to do one like maybe twice, 2 times a week, but we'll see. But for the time being, there will be at least one more of these videos to wrap up the season as we go down to Florida, I'm hoping, for a bowl game and a chance to get that 10th win and end the season on a proper high note. All right, so until then, go blue.